Okay, I think I have the tools that I need to go in here and look. What we're going to look for is a small hickory limb or tree bush that we can cut a stick off of. We don't want to damage the larger ones. We just want to take the small undergrowth out, but I've got the cutters for that. So hang on, let's go. We're going to walk through the woods here and see what we can find. And what we're looking for, look at this. This is a nice little hickory limb here that I'm probably going to cut and make a walking stick out of. I'll show you how to make a walking stick later on, but look at that. And we're going through here. We've got this hickory limb here, a little bit too large for our needs. We've got all sorts of nice growth back in here that is going to be some good wood one day soon, I hope. But this is a maple here. If you look, all these little limbs on here that are growing out, this is where your figured maple comes from. And this will make some nice shaker oval boxes. We have more hickories here. See some large, big hickories in the top up there. We have some black oak, lots of white oak. Black oak is not too prevalent down here, but it does make a beautiful wood. More hickories, none quite the right size. Got some holly bushes here. Hollies make, we'll take the leaves off of those for our Christmas decorations, and they look pretty. If you look at this oak tree here, sometime back, if you look at the way the grain is, it appears to have been struck by lightning at some time. It survived, so it must not have been a very large lightning strike, but it's going to pass one day. You can see over there another one that got it too, and it did die. So many hickories and so many poplars, and we have tulip poplar that are growing back over there. Nice big hickories. Have wild pecan too, but we don't see many of those. One tree that we do have that's really a weed, and about the only thing they're good for, it's maybe making a walking stick, is this sweet gum. Sweet gum are just like weeds. They grow up most everywhere down here, but they're kind of shaded out in here because this is old growth hardwood and pine. And old native pine here. These are short leaf pines instead of the loblolly pines that people plant, or the southern pine that people plant for pulpwood. These being what they are with the short needles, they're a little bit more hardier than the loblolly because these are natural pines. They're native to this area, not like the loblolly, which was manipulated to grow down here in the heat. And tree farmers plant them all the time. There again, sweet gum, you see it's just coming up like a weed. And I enjoy coming through here through the woods and looking for different things, but you see deer back through here all the time. At the moment, there's 3 does that come through here on a daily basis. And each of them have fawns. One doe has 2 fawns, twins, that just really look nice. They're still in spots, although one of them is just out of spots. It's gotten bigger. But when you come through here, walking in these woods, this is the way I grew up. If you've never grown up into the countryside and lived this life, you don't quite understand. I've been to the cities. I've been to Los Angeles. I've been to New York. I've been to Detroit. I've been to Chicago and Salt Lake City, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington. I drove a truck for 45 years, and there's no place I haven't been to. I've been to 49 states and Canada. I never drove to Hawaii, though. A little bit too wet to try that. Nice tree. But all through here they grow up. One thing I wanted to show you while I'm up in this area is a sunken road that is from years gone by down here. I don't know if it was a logging road or if it was just an old service road that went back in here through the woods, through the property. But it is old, probably 100 years old or older. Bring the metal detector up here and check things out. Another small maple. You can see here the beginnings that I've found of this old sunken road that goes off on back up through there. Then it comes down through here. See, it's got the pine trees growing up through it there. When we come on down, you can see it a little bit better here. But it is an old road, and my suspicions are that it was probably an old logging road. This area was harvested a number of years ago. You can see some of the telltale remnants of it here. So my suspicions are that it was a logging road. It doesn't mean that there's not something on here or that it wasn't an old county road. That, I don't know, we might can metal detect it and see what we can find one day. I'll make a video on that. This hole here, you have two choices. It's either an armadillo or a rabbit. My suspicions are it's an armadillo. I haven't seen rabbits around in quite a while. It seems the coyotes that come through take them, which is all right because I have a garden, but I also enjoy eating rabbit. Rabbit and squirrel and deer meat. But you can see that old road there. And it just kind of tailors, it just kind of trickles on off down through here. And I haven't tracked it beyond this point here. That property is not mine, so I don't go on it without permission. You don't want to trespass. I don't want people trespassing, and I know my neighbor doesn't either. But it's still part of the beautiful property. He clear cut his about 10 years ago, and you can see how it's grown up. And I'm going to talk about the hardwood here, but if you look beyond, you can see the pines where he clear cut. I had to clear cut when I first bought, build my lake. This is about a 7-acre lake that I have down here. You'll see that momentarily, but here's some of the damage that pine beetles can do. They've killed trees back in here. I've got to get out here and cut them down before the pine beetles spread. Look at that beautiful old hickory there. One right next to it, one behind it. Call this little bush a beautyberry. I don't know the botanical name of it, but about this time every year it begins to bloom with these seed pods here, and they really look nice. It just kind of gives some color to a otherwise bland or drab look, if you want to call it that. But they are nice, but we do call them a beautyberry. This is a hedge bush, but I also believe this to be a huckleberry bush. Huckleberries are like a small blueberry. These grow wild in the woods and make great jellies and preserves, pies, cobblers. We come through and forage for these all the time. Here's that sweet gum again. It's a pretty big sweet gum. Probably need to cut it down. It's got some figure right there. I may cut it down just for that figured wood. It's dying anyway. It's been topped by wind. Back in the early 2000s, we had Hurricane Katrina come through here. And Hurricane Katrina did a lot of damage. The winds were still 100 miles an hour back in here. but it did some damage back here, and I had to come through and cut trees down. We had to cut our way out of the road because it had trees across the road, and it wasn't fun. I mean, we did well back here. We had prepared ourselves for the hurricane ahead of time, but the winds were, like I said, were 100 miles an hour back here, and we just kind of hunkered down, and we're doing fine. Had plenty of gas for our generators. In fact, when Hurricane Katrina hit, we were 3 months without electricity. Being this far back in the woods, we're at the end of the line, and our power company, you know, when you're this far back, you just at your own wilds or your own means, you have to take care of yourself because nobody's going to do it for you. But we had plenty of food, and we had plenty of gasoline, and so we weren't without power. We had our own, and then about 3 months later, they came back and got the power back up, got the lines back up, and we were back in service. Magnolias are back in here, some beautiful old magnolias. We have some that are probably 300 or 400 years old. In fact, I'll take you over there and show you in just a minute. This is our lake. Got one there with some ducks. The problem I'm having right now is with lily pads, and I've got to do something to get rid of these lily pads. Ducks landed across the lake, and I'll be doing that. As long as they're in bloom like this, you can work with them. I have a sort of a, we call it a lake mower that you can throw out there and can scrape the lily pads off, but that doesn't really kill the root, and if you don't kill the root, you're not going to kill the lily pad, and you're still going to have problems with it. So we come on back. This view that you see here is one of the reasons why we enjoy it so much down here. It's just beautiful, it's quiet, you don't hear anything from your neighbors. If you look through there carefully, you can see his food plot that he's planted back there for deer season. Poor fella. I doubt if he's going to get any, because during deer season I come up here and hunt myself or make a bunch of racket. I don't like people on my back door that much. So he probably won't see much back there. Moving on across the dam, we'll come up and I'll show you that magnolia tree. Magnolia, I wanted to show you a few things. This is a blueberry bush that came up naturally and produces lots of blueberries every year. And we come down here and pick these too. We have 2 blueberry bushes up at the house up by the barn that I guess we get 20 quart bags of blueberries every year. But this is why I do not like sweet gum trees. They're like a weed. They come up most anywhere they come up. And they're just nasty, I think. I don't like it. Some people may argue, but it takes a lot of work to take care of it. Let's move on to the magnolias. Pine tree first. Kind of give you an example of how old it is. My guess is it's probably 100 to 150 years old. And how it survived, but just kind of give you an idea of how old it is and how big it is. Look at that. Huge. Magnolia. I think they call this a swamp magnolia. They require a lot of water in order to survive. I can tell you, if I had to guess, if you look at this little one next to it, when I lived a little closer to the city, I had planted some magnolias, and after 25 years, they weren't any bigger than this one, this small one here. But when I moved down here and bought this property, this old magnolia was here, and it looks so beautiful. You ought to see it when it's blooming. Give you an example of how old it is and how big it is. Here's my hand. if I had to guess, compared to what this one was, I know these were here when we bought this property. We bought this property in 1998, and these little magnolias were here then, so that'll tell you how old they are. And if those trees have been here for 24 years, 26 years, thereabouts, imagine how old this tree could be. This tree could be between 200 and 300 years old. Hazel, there's a bunch of it here in the woods. Witch hazel can be used. It's a natural plant that grows in the woods, deep woods like this, mainly in wet, moist areas. And it's good for skin problems. If you have a skin rash or skin, it helps in, make you look younger. It shrinks your skin up and just refreshes that. It's good for many uses. So go to the woods and look for witch hazel in the deep woods, and you make your own poultice to care for your skin problems. All of this in here is known as old growth forest, and it hasn't been logged in a long, long time. Probably back when that old road that we saw earlier was back here. And if you look over there, you can see a tree. That tree was damaged by Hurricane Katrina, and it's still standing after all these years. But when we move on up, witch hazel everywhere. More huckleberry bushes back up in here. But old growth pine is back here, natural pine that came up on its own. And old growth hardwood. There's oak, and there's hickories, and shagbark hickories. Maybe a wild pecan or two back here. This is what we call the wild huckleberry. It kind of looks like a small blueberry, and it's very tasty, sweet. Wonderful back in here. I don't know if you've ever had root beer, Breyer's root beer, but root beer comes from an extract from sassafras trees or sassafras bushes. Used to when we were growing up. We couldn't afford things like Breyer's root beer or A&W root beer or anything like that. My daddy had broken his back, and so look, there goes a deer, 2 of them. That's one of the fine things about walking through the woods, is seeing all this. But as I was saying, my daddy had gotten his back broken in an accident when he was at work. He got pinned between a dock and a trailer that was backing up. And he was flat of his back for a year recuperating. So during that time, what we had to eat was whatever I could hunt, fish, or grow. So I had to learn how to grow a garden. Look at that, that's a natural trail that goes through there. But it was just sort of a root hog or die. But we managed. We got by. We always had plenty of meat and fish and vegetables. If you can imagine an 8 to 12-year-old boy taking care of everybody, planting a garden, growing food, fishing, hunting. I came home one time, rode my bicycle way up in Lauderdale County and went fishing, and I caught 150 brim back in there. And I rode about 20 miles one way on the bicycle to go to this fishing hole. But I came home and I had fish all over my bicycle trying to get back home. But something interesting over here as we're walking through the woods. We're still looking for that hickory limb, but I got sidetracked. I thought I'd show you this wooded area first. This old piece of tin was here, laying on the ground, and I can't tell, but it looks like it might have been a fender off of a tractor or something like that, or off of a pickup truck. What do you think? Stump that was cut down years ago, and you can see it's got some hack marks on it there. I put those hack marks there. This pine stump has gone fat. In other words, it's got turpentine in it, and it has become what we call fat pine down here. And you take this and cut the chunks out of it and split it up and use it for fire starters. It will burn for a while, and you can start your fire with that. I saw a burl back in here. I wanted to take you and show you what a burl is. That has some beginnings of burls. Burls are usually a canker that grows on the side of the tree like this. And if you were to take this tree and mill it down, you would get some beautiful figure in your wood. If woodworkers would really appreciate that, because they know what I'm talking about, but it's just beautiful. Well, here it is. I think this is our young hickory that we're going to take down and make our Whoo stick out of. We're just going to cut it down here at the base. We'll cut a section out of it. There we have it, the makings of our Whoo stick. If you look down through there, you can see our lake. I'm back up on the hillside here in the woods walking around. And this particular area is probably my favorite spot to come to. You can come up here and contemplate. We've got this magnolia tree that I don't know how it got down like this. Probably the wind split it off. What do you think? But it's an old magnolia too. But I come up here and there's plenty of natural sitting spots here that you can come, and I sit down here and I look around. It's so peaceful and quiet. You don't hear anything. Nothing. If you listen real close, you might hear some wildlife. But, you know, if you get to where you're somewhat down in the dumps for some reason, you can come to a place like this. If you have something nearby you that they'll let you get out in the woods and walk around, go looking for it. There's just nothing like being out in nature. I'm not a conservationist by no means, and I don't. It's just so peaceful and quiet. This is my pistol range where I come to target practice. I use a 22 Browning semi-automatic pistol that I use, and always best to keep up your skills. If you know how to shoot, being in the woods, you're going to be confronted with things from time to time where you might need to. One of the most dreaded things that I have down here is this. This is called privet hedge. Privet hedge was brought in here from an oriental country, I don't know, China, Japan, along with kudzu vine. And it's not native to this area, but it has just gone crazy, and it will overrun your property. I don't hear him now, but she's back there somewhere. If you've ever heard a deer blow, it sounds something like this. This is what we call a widowmaker. I need to get this cut down before it falls down on my head. Dangerous, extremely dangerous. See these in the woods, be careful. I wanted to bring you back in through here a little ways. There's a particular oak tree back in here. Years ago, this area was inhabited by Chickasaw, Choctaw, and I believe Flathead Indians. And this area, look, that's a turkey track. Loaded with turkeys back in here. But anyway, the Indians used to come through this area going to what we now call Delo Park. You can look that up on the internet, but they came through this area on their way, and I don't know for certain about this particular oak, but I suspect it's what we call a trail marker oak. Then again, in the early 1900s, we had a tornado come through here and did a lot of damage. In fact, it destroyed our town, our little town. And our little town used to be well known at the turn of the century for being a very, what is the word I'm looking for? It was a town that was on the move. I won't call it progressive, but it was a town that was on the move. It had a school, it had more than one school. It had 2 or 3 schools and a college. Had 2 hospitals, 6 doctors. And then the tornado came through and blew everything away. And it's basically what you see now. There is no town. I guess that's one reason why I want a metal detect down in here, see what's going on. This area here is a boggy area, kind of wet during the wintertime. So if you come down here, it's best to wear boots. But I want to show you this oak tree. I suspect, and I'm probably wrong, I don't know, but look at this thing. This oak tree is hundreds of years old. And it's seen all kind of things down here. At the base right here, I would say it's 5 feet across. And as I look at it, I see something I don't like. If you look right up in there, you might can see it's a carpenter ant. And if carpenter ants have gotten into this thing, it means that it's not going to be here a whole lot longer. But just a beautiful old oak tree. I call it a twisted oak. What do you think? Is it a trail marker oak or just a natural twisted oak? Oh, I'd love to see the wood that's on the inside of this. I bet it would make some beautiful stuff. Look at that. There's that carpenter ant right there. I'm gonna have to get down here and do something about that. This area in here are pine trees that I planted about 20 years ago. And they're growing nicely. If I wanted to harvest some, I could harvest some now and get the bigger ones like this one and make my own lumber out of them. But I had to clear cut this area. And back then when I cut it, the prices on timber were fair. They weren't good, but they're fair. And I got enough out of the clear cut to build that lake you saw earlier. Growing up in the woods, we used to see this thing occasionally. We call this a good news bee. Whenever we saw one, we knew something good was going to happen, or so we thought. Going down the power line, I'm looking for some sassafras. I told you earlier about the sassafras. These berries here, I don't know if these are what we call possum grapes or not. I'll have to look this up. But I'm looking for sassafras right now, and I look across, I see a huge squirrel running, but I haven't seen any yet. This entire area here was once covered in pines like this. I cut these pines down myself, and I cleared this area up here with nothing but a chainsaw and a Cub Cadet lawnmower. Took me a long time to get it done, but persistence paid off, and I got it done, and it's now just a beautiful area to walk, to look at the vegetation, to look at the growth. And I'm still searching for a sassafras bush. So if I find one, I'll get back with you. Otherwise, we'll show up at the barn. This, my friends, is a sassafras bush, sassafras tree. Rarely do they get any bigger than this, but this time of the year when the leaves start changing, the sassafras gets really pretty. But I have a couple of them in here. And if you want to make yourself some root beer, I got 3 of them in here. To make yourself some root beer, you have to pull this up and get some roots out of the bottom. That's why it's called root beer. You take those roots, split them open, shave the bark off of them, split them open, and boil them for about 30 minutes. And then add you a little bit of sugar, and you have what's known as root beer. Just a bit of trivia there. If you ever wonder where A&W root beer was inspired, this was it. This has been a beverage or a tea for hundreds of years in this country, and people drank it quite often. They used it for medicinal purposes too. It's supposed to have made them feel better.